Welcome, everyone. I still see a few trickling in, which is very exciting. We are thrilled that you are here to chat about everything IPSIS. So we really hope this session will be informative, inspired by you and your questions. Please feel free to jump in at any time with your questions, come off mute, put a question in the chat. We'll really do our best to address your IPSIS-related questions on the go. I'll just take you through a little bit of an agenda of what we're planning for this session. So we're going to introduce ourselves so you know who we are and what our area of expertise is. Then we'll chat a little bit about our Brightspace Learning Center. So what is it and how can you get access? And truly why you would want to be there, why it's a pretty valuable place to be. We'll then dive right into your questions. So addressing some of the ones that a few of you may have jumped into our community discussion. We put it out to the community to ask for your IPSIS related questions as a lead up to this event. So we're definitely going to address those. And then we've also pulled some that we've received in the community in the past that we think would resonate with lots of you. So we're going to dive into some of those. And of course, any questions that you have on the fly as well. And then we're at the end of this event, we're going to just poll you just to get a little read on, was this event helpful? We truly appreciate you taking the minute or two to give us your feedback because it really does help us to plan for future events and inspire new changes. So I am Julie Lau. I am a community specialist on the community team, and I feel very fortunate to be working on this team and to be able to be helping to host this event. I'll just turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, Awesome here, also a fellow community specialist and super excited to get you your answers for IPSIS related things.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Blackwell. I'm another community specialist on the team, and I am so excited to enable everyone for this session and also learn some things about IPSIS myself.
Hi there, I'm Steph Baldwin. I've been so excited to see so many questions posted inside of our community in lead up to this event. Laura has been wonderfully jumping in to add a lot of answers right in our discussion forum. If you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, there's still plenty of time, and you can also add in some questions that we'll be addressing today in our session right here. So excited to be here, and thank you to everyone who's been engaging in our community and taking a look at our resource in the Learning Center.
Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Stewart. I'm the team lead of the Transition Services team. I've worked with a number of you to transition to D2L Standard CSV over the last couple of years. I'm very excited to answer any questions you have about D2L Standard CSV, and hopefully we can ensure that you're operating as efficiently as possible, especially going into the semester start period.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lavni Dillon. I'm the product manager for anything related to IPSIS. I'm primarily here to listen to the feedback you guys have for IPSIS in journal, and also support my team members in answering any questions following this session.
Hi, everybody. My name is Derek Abram, and I'm a senior implementation consultant here at D2L, and looking forward to helping to hopefully answer some questions that you all might have, kind of from an implementation perspective.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Hummich. I'm a project manager with our learning services team, but I would be helping out from an implementation perspective as well.
Thank you everyone for such wonderful introductions. We are all excited to be here and learn more and help enable learning more. And speaking of learning, we would like to quickly highlight our Brightspace Learning Center. So for those who are a bit new to the community or new to learning about the Learning Center, you can access this on the community once you've registered for our SSO and signed in. It'll be in the quick links widget, and it'll just be under Learning Center. If you click in there, it'll bring you to our Brightspace Learning Center platform, where all D2L clients have access to different sorts of resources. There you will find our premium content, paid content, which has things like certificate and subscription training. There are also free courses. So we call them freemium courses that include downloads and teaching tools. A great one we've recently added is Lynn's gamification, which is a great course that one of our clients was very kind to create with us and share her knowledge. And you can also connect with our other tools. So besides Learning Center and Brightspace guided training, we also have our product idea exchange, again, all in the quick links. And we are very excited to welcome everyone here and continue with learning together.
Okay, so I'll pick it up from here. So IPSIS, you may have heard this word before and you don't know what it means, but basically IPSIS is what we call our integration platform. So it is the tool that you go to look at within Brightspace, and within that tool, clients can use a number of different integration types. One of those being D2L standard CSV. There are other types of integrations like OneRoster, ILP. All of those are accessed from the IPSIS administration tool as well. So you can think of IPSIS as like the overall tool that contains your integrations, and D2L standard CSV is the actual integration type that you're running that we're going to be talking about today. So D2L standard CSV is a D2L proprietary sort of formatting that allows you to get basic rostering information into Brightspace. So you can create org units, you can create users, send enrollments and unenrollments. All those can be done using D2L standard CSV. In addition, you can connect parents to their children or auditors to their auditees. All of those can occur all within the CSV files. It is not a two-way communication though, so there's nothing that will come back from Brightspace to your SIS. It's a one-way integration from your SIS into Brightspace via the CSV files that you're sending to us. So that's just a brief overview. I know there's a number of questions. I don't know if we want to cover where the questions should go. We have some that are already in the community. I think we just want to have, if you have questions as we're talking here today, put them in the chat and we'll address them as they come in.
You're also welcome to put them in the Q&A module. We're watching both spaces. So yeah, big thank you to everyone for your participation here today.
There's no questions in there yet, so feel free to start adding questions you have, but to start out with, let's just address the questions that have been added to the community already. So there are a couple that have been added. One is whether D2L standard CSV will cover course grades. It does not. So you can only send your rostering information to Brightspace, not send grades from Brightspace back to your SIS using D2L standard CSV. However, you can use D2L's APIs, so our Brightspace APIs, to pull grades. You could also use data sets to pull grades from Brightspace to get them back into your SIS. It just isn't done as part of D2L standard CSV specifically. The next question here, I believe, was about copying. I did ask for some clarification in the community about it, but I'll just talk a bit about copying. So there isn't a mechanism to automatically copy anything. So there's two sort of related questions in the community post about copying. So you can copy as a one-time copy between one course and another, but there isn't any mechanism to set up like a permanent link between multiple org units where when you add something in one course, it's just going to automatically be copied into a bunch of other courses at the same time. So there's no mechanism in IPSIS to do that. There's also no mechanism across the system to do that. That isn't something we support at this time. So you can do a one-time copy. You could also copy select items at various times if you need to, but doing a continuous copy isn't something that we currently support. So
Oh, sorry, Laura. I'm just going to jump in. Sorry. I do see that there's just a question in the chat, if that's all right, if we just address that.
Yeah.
So Faith is asking, can you provide which method you feel is better for combining sections?
Yeah, so Lavny, it might be a good time if you want to talk about the new course merge tool that we're releasing to address that question.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in July, we have GA'd our new course merging tool, which is like a teacher initiated course merge tool, which allows your admin persona and your instructor personas to merge courses at the start of the school year. If you need more details, I'll just paste the community links. There's a whole documentation around it and transition plan for folks who might be already using section association tool as of today. So it fits both. So yeah, so I'll add more details.
Right, and then the second question here is, what can you put in a template that copies to a course offering? So with in-course templates, you can put a lot of the same things that you can put in a course offering, like files or announcements, things like that. And you can use the copy course components tool to copy from the template into the offering. There are no components that are an automatic copy though. Even between a template and an offering, there's no automatic copying between the two. So you would be using the copy course components tool. All right. I don't see any other questions there. So I'll go to the next one on the list. Oh, there's another one here. So if you map a course offering created manually to IPSIS, can it be populated? Do you mean populated with enrollments or populated as in using the copy mechanism that is part of your IPSIS configuration? Copy content. I believe the copying is just for new courses, Labneed. I don't know if you can confirm that, but I believe the copying that IPSIS will do is just for when courses are created new.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the course was created manually and you sent the update command through IPSIS, it wouldn't be populated through the copy because it already exists. All right, so let's go to the next question here. So can IPSIS automatically populate a course I have created manually? So that was the same question that we just answered there in the chat. Okay, another question in the chat here. Is there a difference between plug and play and non-plug and play in IPSIS? I believe you're probably referring to our older integrations. I don't think we have any non-plug and play current integrations. Lavneet, do you concur there? I think D2L Standard CSV, One Roster, ILP, those are all plug and play.
Yep. I think that could be the old, like some legacy ones were non-plug and play. So that might be what Matthew's referencing.
Yeah, I believe that's what he's referencing as well. So there are some older integrations that are part of IPSIS that don't use the same administration page, and the management of them, like the configuration of them, is different. They were a lot more involved in getting them configured, and most of those configurations weren't easily changeable by the client. But the plug and play version, so the D2L Standard CSV and the others that you access through IPSIS administration, those configurations are available to you as the clients via the administration tab. So you can change those yourself without having to put in a ticket to D2L support. So that's sort of what we mean there by plug and play, is the configurations are there right from the start. They can be configured by you. And the setup of the files and stuff, like the formats, are all ready to go. You just start using them like they are. All right, let's see. So one issue we keep running into is instructor changes that leave the old instructor enrolled in the course offering when the course has multiple sections. So this is a complication that some people do see. So a lot of clients like to use access all course sections for their instructor. If you're using the access all course sections permission for instructors, you have to control the enrollment and unenrollment through IPSIS for the instructor at the course offering level. And the reason for that is every section that the user is enrolled in has to be unenrolled before IPSIS will unenroll them from the course offering. So when you're using access all course sections, say you have one course offering that has 3 section children, then that instructor has an enrollment into each of those 3 sections, and you have to send an unenroll for each of those 3 before they'll be unenrolled from the course. Similarly, if you are doing like a cross listing via the section association tool or the course merge tool, even if you're not using access all course sections, if that instructor is being auto-enrolled into the other sections via that merge process, you have to unenroll them from all of the sections that they have been enrolled into. So really the key is if you go into the user tool and you can see they have an enrollment in any of the child sections, those all have to be removed before the course offering will be removed. Like I mentioned there, one thing clients do for instructors in particular is we'll send unenrollments for instructors. So send enrollments and unenrollments for instructors at the course offering level. That can help get around some of those section related problems. But if you are using section enrollments for instructors, then you do have to send an unenrollment for every section that they are enrolled into. All right, the next question here, can we enroll students into any org unit like programs with the CSV files, and do you have a CSV example? Yes, definitely. So if you are using the D2L Standard CSV version 2.0, you can enroll any user role into any org unit type using your enrollment CSV file. So the only thing you have to do there is make sure that IPSIS knows about the org units that you want to enroll the user into because they've been included in the relevant org unit CSV files. And then in your enrollment file, similar to a course section enrollment, instead of including the section as the code, you would include the code of the org unit you're trying to enroll the user in. So if you're trying to enroll a student into like school A, for example, your CSV line will be the student's org unit or org defined ID, then the role, and then the last column will contain the code school A, and that would be how you enroll them into a school or program or any org unit type. It would be similar. And we can provide a sample CSV. I apologize. I'm not sharing my screen, but we can provide that sample in the community discussion thread. All right. Let's see. The next question here, are field values essentially text strings? Is null a valid value? It depends on the field. So some of the fields are text strings, but some of them, when they're stored, they are not stored as text. So the D2L Standard CSV configuration documentation, so the documentation that tells you which fields to include in each of the files and what the format of the data for that field should be, will lay out exactly the format that's required for each field. So in some fields, you could use a null. If you use a null, though, it's going to be listed in the system as null. So for example, if you were to send a course name as the value null, then when you go into Brightspace and you look at that course, the name you're going to see is null. You are not going to see like an empty value. So you can leave the value empty for fields that are not required just by including a comma, but nothing else in the field. But for fields that are required, you should include valid data. If you don't want it to be valid, you just want it to be empty, you could use something like null, but just be aware that you'll see that within Brightspace, it'll be listed as a text string. All right, let's see. next one here, and hopefully I'm not talking too fast. If I am, feel free to put that in the chat and tell me to slow down. But I want to make sure we have enough time to get through all of them. I see lots of messages here waiting for me to read. Let's see, what's the difference between D2L Standard CSV 1.0, 1.1, 2.0, 2.0? So whenever we add new fields to the CSV files, we increase the version number. And the reason for that is for backwards compatibility. So if you were a client using 1.0 and we added a whole new field to the user's file, for instance, we would break your existing integration without any time for you to adjust to it. So we will increase the version and add the new fields that we need in the newest version, and that allows clients to adopt those newer versions when they're ready. So we always recommend you try to get on the latest version, at least within a semi-reasonable amount of time. So as of today, I'd recommend that you should be using 2.1. But the differences between the two, we have that laid out in a community post. We can put the link to that in the discussion on the community for you as well. But it's differences in the allowed fields. So between 1.0 and 2.0, for instance, we added preferred first name and last name. We added the ability to include custom org unit types like schools and programs, and to enroll people into custom org unit types. So that's the difference between those two. And then 2.0 to 2.1, we added a sort last name field, which was for a particular region that needed to be sorting by the last name differently than how the last name was listed. But all that is laid out in the community post. We can share that with you, and it explains what the field differences are between the 4 versions that are out there right now. All right, let's see. When updating users, can I provide multiple files, or do all user updates need to be contained within the same file? You can provide multiple files if you want. There's no limit on how many files you need to provide. The thing that you would want to keep in mind whenever you're looking at multiple files is whether there's any ordering that's going to be important. So for instance, if you are sending users and you're sending parent users and student users with the relationship with their parents, the parents have to be processed before the students to be attached to the students as a parent. So in that case, you would want, if you were going to use multiple files, to name the files in such a way that the parents are processed first and the students are processed after the parents. So you can use multiple files. You just want to make sure if there's any ordering requirements that you follow those carefully with how you name the files. And also just don't go crazy with it, right? Like don't put one user in every file so that we have to open up and process like 100,000 little tiny CSV files. It's going to be annoying for you to look at the logs. It's going to be annoying for us to look at the logs. So, you know, try to be reasonable about it. But there isn't like a hard limit on the number of files. I'll take a break here. Maybe, Derek, I'm going to put you on the spot. You want to take a couple? I've been talking like continuously for a while. So maybe let's like use someone else's voice for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure. I think you've covered everything up to now that was in the chat.
Oh, did I reach the end? Okay. I was talking faster than I thought.
You did great, Laura. So yeah, please feel free to keep the questions coming. If it's helpful, I can just pull up some previous questions that we've heard. I'll just share my screen again. We can jump into these in case they're helpful.
Perfect.
Just to interject again, we have a new one coming from Sean.
Perfect. Are there any limits to the number of rows that can be in these CSV files that D2L Standard CSV is processing in a single run? That's a good question, Sean. I don't know offhand. I know Excel has a limit in terms, like when you're working in Excel, for example, building CSV files. I know there's a limit there. Lavneet, I think we've seen clients process a fairly large number of rows, but the more rows, the longer it takes, right? So when we start looking at like hundreds of thousands of lines, for example, that's going to obviously take a lot longer.
Yeah, and I think in the UI, correct me, you and Laura, if I'm wrong, if you're doing the drag and drop version, like on the dashboard and not pushing it to the SFTP, there is a size limit in journal within Brightspace, which is 1 GB. Like the files cannot be more than 1 GB. That's the standard limit. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, as Derek said, there's no hard limit as such. But again, there should be some recommendations around when structuring your file. Try to keep your files differential, not full syncs with every run, right? Or send us only like the first run of each school year or semester would be like likely a full sync, but thereafter just to send us the changes that has happened during the 24-hour window. Try to schedule them. Like you can schedule as many times as you want. We literally just ping our SFTP every 10 minutes, and if there is a file, we will run it. But as Derek said, if there are too many records and you're sending us files every like 5-10 minutes, making sure that the last file has run successfully, else your data will start backing up in the queue. And then it will take some time to catch up to the, and then you will see a lot of errors or sometimes also some missing updates in your IPSIS. So just be mindful of those and follow those journal recommendations that I would say like multiple times a day is fine, like probably 2 overnight and 1 during the day, during the regular business hours. That should be like a standard practice. But definitely, I highly recommend sending the differentials instead of full syncs.
Yeah, so some of you that I have worked with to transition off of holding tank, you've heard this from me before, but I'll say it again for everyone's benefit. You can send the files based on the schedule that you establish with IPSIS. We're not setting a scheduled task for you like we were with some of the older integrations. So you can send them as often as every 10 minutes if you want, but you got to use the Spider-Man example here, right? Like with great power comes great responsibility. If you send too many files where we can never stop processing them, we're constantly processing and we never catch up, likely you're going to get a phone call from me, right? Like the dev team's going to call me and say, hey, this person's sending way too much. Can you figure out what they're doing and make them stop it? And then you're going to get a call from me and I'm going to say the same thing, like we got to have you working more efficiently here and make some changes. So just kind of keep those things in mind, and make sure that like you're setting yourselves up for success, right? Like if you're sending files that are too large that are going to take days to process, you're missing out on the things that are happening throughout those days that you're processing. So just try to keep it like reasonable in terms of the size of the files and the frequency of how often you're sending it. I think that covered that second question too about what happens if it takes longer than 10 minutes. So then there's a next one there. I don't know, Derek, if you wanted to take that one or I'll keep talking, that's fine.
I think that, yeah, if you want to grab that one, because I'm not quite, that next question, not quite sure how to answer it.
Okay, so does IPSIS perform additional functions beyond the processing of the files sent? So for example, if we send enrollments to a section, does IPSIS automatically propagate enrollments to the parent offering? Yes. So the benefit of using a plug and play integration over, say, building your own API integration is that we already have built-in business rules for you. So one of those is the fact that if you send an enrollment for a section, we'll automatically assign that person to be enrolled in the parent course offering. So there are a few things like that that we will do automatically. For instance, like, let me think of another one here. Assigning the org units you're creating automatically to the organization itself. So you don't have to send your top org level as a parent of any of the org units you're creating. We'll automatically assign it to the organization and make it be a child. So there are things like that that are business rules that are just being done automatically for you. So the next one here is about bootstrapping to start a new integration. So Derek, if you don't mind, I think this is like definitely your wheelhouse in implementation about how do you get a client started when they're starting brand new?
Yeah, so in terms of IPSIS, when we're looking at like D2L standard CSV with a totally net new client, and it's been a little while since I've worked with a brand new client. I traditionally kind of work with existing clients. We typically refer to the documentation that's found within the community quite a bit. There's a really great, if you haven't seen it before, there's a really great chart, like a screenshot out of an Excel workbook, and it's all kind of color coded. And it kind of shows you how the different D2L standard CSV files sort of tie together and relate to one another, and how the different required fields kind of are dependent on one another. That has been a really great resource for clients when, you know, they're starting totally from scratch with like, how the heck do I build this stuff? And so from there, it's basically creating those scripts on your side to kind of pull that related data, build those CSV files. We do a lot of testing with the client. Like, one of the things we can do with the integration is we can put it into like a validation mode where it kind of, verifies that your general file structure is good. Doesn't necessarily mean that like code dependencies are there. And so we typically kind of work through that process and kind of, do some testing, put some different eyes on it to make sure everything looks good. It's a tricky question to answer because every client's a little bit different. Everybody's data is a little bit different. But those articles on the community are a really great resource that we lean on heavily. So hopefully that helps to answer that question.
I'll also unselfishly plug Derek and the implementation team. Whenever you're starting a new Brightspace implementation, especially starting a new integration, we always recommend you have service hours with our implementation team, and they can help you through all those nuances and testing and all those things. That is their specialty. So I would always recommend that you have time with the implementation team whenever you're newly implementing Brightspace. Let's see. So the next question is, how do you determine which type of IPSIS you're using? So that article that I referenced that we'll put a link to in the discussion for this session, it lays out how you tell whether you're using one of the older IPSIS versions, whether you're using D2L Standard CSV, and how you tell which version of D2L Standard CSV you're using. So that is all laid out there with pictures and all that stuff in that article. So we will provide the link to that. Right off the surface though, D2L Standard CSV, you can tell the version you're using by the manifest file. So that's the file that declares the version that you're using. So if you ever want to know what version of D2L Standard CSV you're using, look at your manifest file. And if you don't have a manifest file, you're using 1.0. So that's just a standard sentence on that one, but we'll link to that article that provides more information on how to tell the difference between the older versions and D2L Standard CSV. Where can you find the list of business rules that are built into D2L Standard CSV? So those are going to be listed in the training course. So the course that we talked about in the Learning Center right off the bat, it goes over in a lot of detail the best practices when using IPSIS, what IPSIS will do in certain circumstances. So I'm going to plug that selfishly on this one for me because I put so much work into it, but there's so much information there. I really recommend if you're using D2L Standard CSV, go through the course, use as a guide as you continue on your D2L Standard CSV journey. We're going to keep it updated and make sure that it remains useful for clients. But we really built that as a way to inform you about all the nuances of using the integration in an easily accessible way. Can IPSIS support multiple source systems? Yes, it can, with caveats though. So each source system is a system on its own. You can think of it, it's like it's on its own little island. So any data that you send to one source system is not going to be known to the other. So you couldn't, for instance, send users to source system 1 and then try to enroll those users in courses, and source system 2 without having also sent the users into source system 2. So that's going to be one sort of caveat to having multiple. The other one is you don't want them to step on each other, right? Like if you're sending the same data about the same users or the same courses to both source systems, you may end up with weird behavior that's going to cause your users to get alarmed. So for instance, if you're sending data from your SIS in one source system and from your HRS system in the other, and they both contain the name for a user, if the name's been updated in your HRS but not your SIS, you have the potential that when one file runs, Bob's name gets set to Robert, and when the next file runs, it gets set back to Bob. And every time you run a file and you process that user, it flips back and forth, and then the user is going to be like, what's happening? What sort of weird Willy Wonka world am I in? So those are just some things you would want to take into account before you have multiple source systems. So it's definitely possible, but there are things that you should be aware of and plan for before you go down that route of having multiple source systems.
We do have an excellent question that's appeared in the Q&A. Do you want me to read that out? Are you seeing that now, Laura?
Yeah, I can see that one. So how do you handle a situation where the file is in the process of being written to you and at the same time IPSIS begins to process it? So that actually will not happen to you, which is good. So the way that IPSIS and the SFTP interact with each other, if the zip package is still being written to on the SFTP site, IPSIS won't pick it up at that time that it's picking up files. It won't pick it up until the next time that it goes to pick up a file. So you wouldn't have a situation where you're still sending your file via the SFTP and IPSIS is picking it up in the middle. That won't happen. We've built those sort of safeguards into the process for you. I don't know, Labneet, if you have anything to add about the SFTP there.
No, I think you got it.
These are some really great questions.
Yeah,
Keep them
people are making me
coming.
think on these, like, but yeah, I think we're caught up. So keep them coming, folks. So can use IPSIS to create courses in a course template, and if I change something in the main course, will it change in the others? So no, it will not. The course templates and the course offerings, while they do have a org structure relationship, they don't have a relationship that causes information in the template to be automatically written to any child course offerings. So you would always have to use the course copy tools to copy between templates and offerings or offerings and offerings. And there are some mechanisms within IPSIS where IPSIS will do those copies for you that can be configured via your IPSIS configuration, but those are for some very specific use cases. So you could use those. You can use the manual course copy mechanisms that are within Brightspace, or you can use APIs or your course copy bulk process to do those copies for you based on a schedule or based on your business needs. But there's nothing within IPSIS or within Brightspace generally that will automatically copy things from a course template to child courses. You would have to use the various copy processes, one of them, to achieve that. All right, I think there's another question. I think it's being typed, but I think we had a couple left from the old community. We can maybe address one of those while we see what other questions come in.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Yep, I can just pull those back up here, Laura.
Okay, so is there a way to download the IPSIS log as a CSV? So no, right now there is not a way for you to download the IPSIS logs as a CSV on your own. However, our D2L support team does have information on how to do that, where they can download and provide you a CSV of errors. So if you have a small number of errors, use the IPSIS log itself. But if you have thousands of errors and you think it would be more valuable to have a CSV, you can put in a support case and they will help you with that.
And to that, Laura, I just want to add to the folks that we are very actively working on overhauling our whole IPSIS audit log experience for our clients. So it will be something we are actively working on. So do look out for future roadmaps for these updates. And this will be one of the things on that list that where we allow the clients to download the log themselves.
Yeah, it has been an active pie item. It's something everybody wants. I want it myself when I work with clients. Like, it's a very useful feature. So we look forward to seeing what the IPSIS team does with the logs going into the future. I think that would be some exciting changes coming up in the tool. And always watch our release notes in the community, and they're going to have the information for you about any changes coming to IPSIS as well as any of our other tools. So definitely subscribe in the community to the release notes, and then you can stay up to date on anything that's announced there. And you can also look at our roadmap. So we have a public facing roadmap in the community that will show you the next few months worth of things that are being worked on. So you can always keep an eye on that, and you'll be able to see when some of these things are planned as we move into the future. So definitely 2 community plugs to add there that would be helpful for you to subscribe to.
I think there's
So
just another one that came into the Q&A, Laura.
yeah, I see that one. So when deactivating a user, is there a default role that's recommended to be set via IPSIS? No. So when you deactivate a user, their account is going to be set to inactive. They will no longer be able to log in when their account is inactive. So the role they have doesn't matter. The only time it would matter would be based on your own rules at your institution. So if, for instance, when you reactivate them, you want them to have to retake an orientation course, for instance, and you have a certain role that gives them access to that orientation course, you may want to go ahead and set that default role to that orientation role at the time you deactivate them, so it's ready for when you do reactivate them. But those are all going to be specific business needs based on your institution. From the Brightspace side, there's really no need to change the role if you're deactivating them, since they no longer have access to the system. I see another one in the chat there that LabNeat has answered around whether you can use the course copy bulk tool after you have created the courses through IPSIS. And she answered it there in the chat of yes, you can. You just have to use the correct identifier. So make sure that you're using the code for the courses that you have sent through IPSIS so it matches versus creating a new one. And it's the same the other way around. If you've manually created a course in Brightspace and you then want to send it through IPSIS, you can do that. You just have to make sure the org unit code matches exactly. So it has to be an exact match. Don't add any trailing spaces or anything like that. That's sort of a gotcha I've seen from a few clients. It needs to be an exact match. And as long as they match exactly, then you can do that sort of in both directions. Okay, let's see. Can we assign students to their advisor and instructor using IPSIS is one of the questions we have on the slide here. So you can assign students to auditors. So if you're referring to an advisor or an instructor as like an auditor who will have a relationship with the students, you can do that via the CSV files, and the formatting for that, similar to parents, would be that you have to send the auditor first, then you can establish a relationship between the student and the auditor on the student record within the user file. If I create users using bulk management and need to update the user's role through IPSIS, how do I do that? So you can do that similarly with org units. For users, the identifier that IPSIS cares about the most is the org defined ID. So if you've manually created a user or you've created them through the bulk user management tool, and you want to later send them through IPSIS, you have to make sure the org defined ID matches. The other thing is if you're going to load them through IPSIS and give them a new username, just like in all situations where you're creating users, you need to make sure the username is unique. So you can't use the username that someone else is using for a different account with a different org defined ID. So both the username and the org defined ID need to be unique. you would send them through IPSIS with the update command, and then it will attach to that existing account.
I think
Right,
sorry, we're just coming
Yep,
up to time
just
here,
the
Laura.
time. Yep.
Go ahead,
I think we're
Austin.
caught up on all the questions. So
I think you did an
we
incredible job,
stayed
all of
good.
you.
Yeah.
I don't know how you kept up with all of them.
Right. Thank you so much to our product experts and to everyone here who's come to share and ask questions about the IPSIS tool. We just have a quick event feedback poll that we want to collect your feedback from. I believe this will help us shape our future convos with community events, and also help product experts understand if these are things that you would want to hear more from or about. So yeah, definitely feel free to hop into the poll and provide that feedback. And again, really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. The event recording will also be shared in case there were any of those questions that you would want to revisit. And again, feel free to continue to post your questions inside community so that the product experts can connect with you there as well through the asynchronous platform. Communities open for access 24/7 to all our Brightspace clients. Yeah, thanks again.
I did take some notes on some of the items that we said we would share links to, and I will share those in that discussion forum as well about this session. So definitely go and look there a bit later, and we'll have those added for you for any of the folks where we reference documentation links that need to be provided.